I'm happy to, yeah. Well, actually, maybe Steve, please. But
So,
I
questions?
saw Michael and Wayne.
Yeah. Mike was first.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned at the beginning that Howard would not be happy with some of the metaphysical aspects. And I think after hearing your talk, I have a way of raising this question in a somewhat more definite way. And that is, I would think that Howard's view would not be being a standard A theorist or a non-standard B theorist, but just thinking that that distinction is not one that is anything more than a manner of speaking.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to decide that question. That you can give various models. You can say this is attractive. You can say this is unattractive. But it's not scientific in the sense that you're going to expect a way to decide it, either mathematically or empirically. Would that be fair?
I think that is fair.
So he wouldn't be saying, I'm adopting a view that this is relative.
Yeah, so
relative becoming. It's more
yeah.
like, look, if you want to talk about becoming and determinacy, you can get a certain parallel between the two theories, the distinctions that Redchick and Putnam and so on can't be drawn. Not that he's taking a position on what is happening with becoming or determinacy in a way that
so I
couldn't be decided empirically.
Yes. So I didn't want to suggest that he was taking a side. Yeah. So that's.
It's just a way to pinpoint where he would get off the
I think that's right. Yeah. But I think it's useful to have made these distinctions to at least more sympathetically understand where Putnam and others are coming
It's
from.
useful, yes.
Well, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I think we take seriously the idea, take that Steve off saddle. Howard would definitely say it hasn't happened yet. Do we now say that there's a truth value to the statement there will be a C value tomorrow? Well, that's a manner of speaking, I think. I think that's the right way. I think that's how Howard would think about it, and I actually think it's also the right way to think about it. And I had an email exchange with him, I think sometime in the 90s about, or the early, but whatever we call the decade that follows the 90s.
The naughties.
But, yeah, we never did. We got through that decade with actually at figuring out what we were going to
That was
call
the
it.
60s.
But anyhow, yeah, so, and I'm paraphrasing because I remember, but he said something like, once you get the physics figured out, and that's a non-trivial task, understanding what the physics is telling us about the world, the question about where to apply the predicate is real doesn't seem to be a really well-posed question.
So, so two responses to so there's one claim that this is what he would say, and there's another claim which is, and that's the view one should have.
Right.
Right. Now, on the second,
Okay.
I've got a couple of things to say which indicate why I'm not happy to just, have all debates dissolved and think everything's fine. So one is an aspect of what the B theorist says about tense reduction. So there's this nice, if you think that there's this way of speaking where you can describe everything there is to say from their point of view, then you get a very nice understanding of what the truth conditions of various tensed utterances are. So the standard new B theory of time way of giving indexing, understanding the tensed. So the tensed utterances are given tense as truth conditions. The propositions they express are tense as propositions, but which propositions they express is dependent on when they're uttered. And all of this fits together very nicely. Now, and it works nicely when you, have, when there's fuzziness about exactly what the time of the utterance was, because utterances are these events that take time. So there's a nice B theory way of thinking about it where everything works. And modulo how we're to decide what's the empirically the most plausible way of understanding our tensed talk in a B theoretically described relativistic world, it will work in relativity too. But if you say, no, I want to have a view where, I'm just saying, well, either of these are just ways of talking, and you're thinking, okay, now I'm taking seriously the way that the utterance is made at some point in space-time. It's not at a point in space-time, it's some finite region where the utterance occurs. And if you're trying to work out, okay, how am I to think of what's going on there in a non-B theory way, I'm not sure it can be done. So I'm not sure we have one of the alternatives between which we want to dissolve the debate even coherently stated. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I think I can understand that these are genuinely metaphysical options. And so it's not just, what I'm being asked to buy into is a kind of serious attitude to metaphysics and meta-metaphysics, according to which, if I can't decide it by science, there's just no substantive dispute to resolve. And that's another talk, and I don't have anything to say about it. But I'm not yet a convert to that view. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. I have a kind of metaphysics-like question. I was wondering about the relation that we are talking about between. So, as I see it, we have a space-time or an event in some point in space-time, another event, and then we are trying to find a relation with some properties, and if that relation is satisfied, then we can say that this other event exists or is real or something like that. But I was wondering, what if, aren't we assuming from the very beginning, if we could relate these kind of things, that both things more or less exist from the beginning? Or doesn't the relation presuppose the existence of the events from the beginning or something like that? I don't know if that makes sense. Or,
yeah. So that
You
was
have to
the
quantify over them.
Yeah,
exactly.
so
that was exactly the worry I was acknowledging,
Okay.
and trying to give you some way of not being too worried about exactly that by saying, well, what do you want to say about the modal analogy? And are you an actualist? Do you think that, well, so you have the same problem with the following combination of views, that it is possible, it might have been the case that something which doesn't exist existed, right? So, so it's possible that there exists an X such that for all Y, if it's actually the case that there exists, this is more complicated than it needs to be, I'm sure. So for all actually existing things, then X is not equal to Y, right? So when I do the standard model theory for this, I need to have in my superdomain of my model some things that aren't in the domain of the actual world. So I seem to be committed to their existence. Yeah. But I'm not, this doesn't start with a there exists quantifier that commits me to it in the object language. So it may just be that, you've got to say, somehow this model theory where I'm quantifying over these things at the metalinguistic level is okay and compatible with my thinking that that's true. And really, there are no such things, but there might have been.
So maybe, I don't know if maybe you answered this, but it was kind of quick when you were talking about the causal set theory. So I just wanted I wanted to hear a little bit about why it ended up in that corner. So
yes.
I take it the relation is between sort of propositions and something else, like in the ordinary case, just points of space-time. But what is it in the causal set theory?
So
what's the truth relative to? Not just the point of the space-time.
Right. So I think this is so there's a B theory way of thinking about causal set theory. You just consider the models you get from classical sequential growth, where you've got this structure where atom by atom the space-time comes into existence. and then from that growth dynamics you get a probability measure over the possible, and you're just saying, well, they're the possible worlds, and these are the relative probabilities, right? That's the B-theory way of thinking about it. But they want to say, no, take this atom by atom coming into existence seriously. And the growth dynamics is such that when you consider a partially grown causal set, there are different ways that you could get there by the atoms coming into existence in a different order. And the growth dynamics is constructed such that it happening one way and happening the other are equally probable. So they want to say there's no fact of the matter. If one were there would be no fact of the matter that you got there one way rather than the other. But of course one never is there, right? Because that would be to say, from no point of view there's a fact of the matter that as things, this is where we are in terms of the growth of the universe. So it seems that you can't have there being absolute facts of the matter about how the universe is growing, and there being no fact of the matter about whether it's one way or the other. So one way is to do justice to there being no fact of the matter, and to have the growth being real is to say, well, as of a particular, and that would be a space-time point, this is how much has come into existence. And it's basically Tooley's, so Michael Pooley had this defense of the growing block, where he makes what's true as of the time primitive. But what's true as of the time are tenseless truths about the block universe, including that it finishes at this surface. So now the idea is, well, let's just do that, but in the context of this causal set theory model. But now it seems that you've got to relativize. I mean, you could relativize to arbitrary maximal anti-chains in the causal set that you get at the end of time, but that isn't the kind of respectable perspective with respect to which truths should be relativized, according to Stein, and I agree. So it should be as of a point. But then what do you want to say the truths
not
are?
just a point, but a point in some sort of partially constructed
Yes,
space-time.
yeah, so as of a point in a partially constructed space-time, but, I mean, and here the details, so it's just a gesture at what I think they should. So if they want to be a kind of growing block universe, they want to have that, the causal past is determinate. So we're asking what's true as of this time, and we've got some partially order, we're considering, some partially ordered causal set, and this is an element in it, and we're considering what do we want to say the truths are as of that time about the growth of the causal set. So it's everything that, no points of space-time that are causally to the future of it exist. That's one thing that's true. And that's a tenseless claim about the causal set as of this point. And then everything that's all events that are causally in the past exist. But then of the elsewhere, I think you want to basically supervaluate over, you want to have that, the universe is kind of growing atom by atom at a time. And one way you might try and do justice to there's no fact of the matter is to say, well, look, according to, my choice for the end of time, it could be that it's got to a stage which includes this point at the future boundary that's like this, or that's like this. And then if you supervaluate, you get kind of an indeterminacy about the elsewhere that's different from the indeterminacy about the future. So for the causal set theorists, it's just, the future's non-existent, the past's real, and it's kind of, there's no fact of the matter about the elsewhere. But no, and it's a tenseless fact that there's no fact of the matter about concerning the elsewhere. So, and I think actually, I don't think this works in the end. I think it falls apart when you try. There are two obvious options for trying to do that, and there are problems with each. But I think a view that distinguishes the future from the elsewhere, actually, that's what we should be doing, because the future is we think of it as unsettled because we can affect it, but the elsewhere is unsettled in a different sense. It's that nothing that we have evidence of it fixes it. There might be probabilistic events. Well, yeah. So let me just leave it at that. I think one worry I have about one objection you could push against Stein's view is that there should be a distinction between the elsewhere and the future, the absolute future that's not made.
So was it right at some point in that discussion we stopped talking specifically about causal set theory and you were talking in general about?
Only at the very end.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the idea that it might, if it can be had, a view that distinguishes the elsewhere from the past and the future would be a good one.
But the idea was causal set theory would do it because of the physics.
Yeah, so
not because of the
this
metaphysics.
way of giving a non-B theory metaphysical framework to try and make sense of these claims that space-time grows atom by atom, but there's no fact of the matter about the order. So that's what they say. And then the question is, how can that be? What does that mean? That's the yeah.
We may have time for one quick, non-leading question. Or we're a little bit behind time at this point, and perhaps we should stop and resume at 10:50, being just 10 minutes behind.
Could we do 10:45?
Okay. Do I get, 10:40? No, 10:45.
Sorry.